white shirt on and a brown coat too. Everybody's joining the crew. You got just one ring that'll rule them all. Hoopy fruit, remember your towel. Get your Uru hammers and your needler guns, a sonic screwdriver or a sword +1. Use Valerian steel if it'll get you to come to the Geek Tank. To the Geek Tank. The Rocky Mountain Geek Tank.
Hi, I'm Guy.
Hi, I'm Troy.
And this is Geek Tank for February 27th, 2015. We've got a great show, as we said before. And
He
now
always says that. Every show, it's a great show.
It's a great show.
Depending on your perspective.
It's a great show.
Yeah.
This is a great show, too.
He thinks so.
No, he thinks so.
They all three think so. Because
I
they're
think
running.
he's thinking something else.
They're on the same programming.
No, yeah. I think he's got a bug.
It's all zeros and ones to me.
He's got a 2. Okay, so anyway, now it's time for Geekend Update.
Geekend Update, which is, now that we're doing monthly shows, really more of a monthly update kind of thing, because we only do them once a month now. Not covering that. And going to do the same thing I did before. Going to show you a movie trailer with my amazing voiceover. This first one we have is not one for you because it's going to be horrific, I think, called The Lazarus Effect. Frank and his fiancée, Zoe, have achieved the unimaginable, bringing the dead back to life. Nothing ever goes wrong when you do that.
No,
Never.
That always works well.
Always works well. After a successful, yet unsanctioned, trial on a newly deceased animal, the team is ready to unveil their breakthrough to the world. When the dean of their university learns of their underground experiments, their project is unexpectedly shut down and their materials confiscated. Kind of like Animal House. Right?
It's true. And their beer.
Yep. Frank, Zoe, and their team take matters into their own hands, launching a rogue attempt to recreate their experiment, during which things go terribly wrong, and one of their own is horrifically killed. Fueled by terror and grief, Frank pushes them to do the unthinkable, which apparently was thinkable because he thought of it.
Undoable.
Undoable? Unconceivable. Wait,
inconceivable.
I don't think
Inconceivable.
I don't think it means what they think it means. So the unthinkable attempt to resurrect their first human test subject. I bet it's Zoe. Initially, the procedure appears to success, but the team soon realizes something is wrong with Zoe. Hey, I was right. As her strange new persona reveals itself, the team quickly becomes stuck in a gruesome reality. They are no longer faced with the question of whether they can bring someone back to life, but whether the wrath of her return. That's it. That's a weird synopsis. Shouldn't it be like whether they can kill her again?
Or whether it's weather.
Weather.
They can only kill her with lightning.
You remember Flatliners?
Yes.
Sounds like Flatliners, the gory version.
Yeah, what I don't get is, why is it whenever you have we're going to bring back a dead body, the main character has to be either Frank or Stein or Frank or Frankenstein or Frankenstein.
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 Frau Blucher.
I am Frau Blucher.
Why does it always have to be that? I mean, because the first thing I was like, Frank. Naturally,
Frank.
His name has to be Frank. And it's kind of like, I'm going to call myself Igor Zoe.
Mm-hmm.
Zoe Gore. Zoe.
Maybe Ed and Gore.
Yeah.
And he just initials it Igor.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, the Lazarus Effect. All right, this next one's part of a trilogy, the Divergent series. We mentioned this in our year-end preview. We diverged. This one is called Insurgent, and I'm not sure if it's the second or the third one in the series because I haven't been keeping up with it. But
neither have I.
All right, the Divergent series, Insurgent. Triss and Four, yes, his name is Four, are now fugitives on the run, hunted by Janine, I guess that's her name, the leader of the power-hungry Erudite elite. Erudite, I bet it's Erudite. Erudite elite. Racing against time, they must find out what Triss's family sacrificed their lives to protect, and why the erudite leaders will do anything to stop them. Haunted by her past choices, whatever those may have been, but desperate to protect the ones she loves, Triss, with 4 at her side, not in front of her, not behind her, but at her side, faces one impossible challenge after another as they unlock the truth about the past and ultimately the future of their world. Looks like a hodgepodge of The Matrix and Inception. Not Insurgent, but Inception.
Insurgeception.
Inception.
Inception.
Inceptionable.
Inception. Inceptionable!
I don't think that means what he thinks it means. All right, this last one. Out of all of these, this is the one that I think I'll end up seeing because I really liked Machete, which had Denny Trejo in it. This looks like it's kind of like it, not exactly. And we may have to bleep me here. We'll have to double check with censors. This one's called, the title of the film, Badasses on the Bayou. All right.
I wonder if it takes place in New Orleans.
So here we go. This film reunites the dynamic duo Frank Vega, played by Danny Trejo. It's another Frank.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's resurrecting people again.
I think it's the opposite of that. And Bernie Pope, played by Danny Glover, as they travel to Louisiana to attend the wedding of their dear friend. What was pictured as a wedding weekend escape to the South turns violently ugly as their friend's daughter is kidnapped for ransom, and madness and mayhem ensue, pressing our senior heroes to once again serve justice. Looks like tons of violence and action, peppered with some grumpy old men jokes.
I'm just gonna make this clear right now. No running.
I was going to say, the senior heroes part is
They're Danny Trejo and Danny Glover are like old, like expendable type old, I guess. And
expendable. I like this. Nowadays, you're expendable old.
Yep, you're expendable.
You know, before you were just old and you ended up in grumpy. You ended up being, with Walter Matthau.
Yeah.
Now you're expendable old and you end up getting put with Sly Stallone.
Yeah, I would venture a guess that at least once in this film someone will say, I'm getting too old for this excrement. Since I don't know if we can say, I already said asses, so, but in any case.
Yeah, but that's,
but yeah.
Donkeys. We were talking about donkeys.
Mm-hmm. I guess. Well, then that would be like Shrek 4.
That's true.
We have like an old Shrek and an old donkey show up to get revenge in Machete style filming. No.
Yeah. It's the weather.
Yeah,
it's the weather. It's making you feel like,
it is all summery.
It's all summery. And the summary is?
It's supposed to snow tomorrow.
It's always nice.
Yeah. We have 70-degree weather one day, then 40 degrees snow the next day.
Yeah.
Then 70-degree weather again.
Welcome to Colorado.
That would be correct.
Well, and that's it for...
I try to keep it short since we're only doing a few, and try to keep the blood to a minimum in the trailer there, as you saw. So.
Awesome. We just changed our Patreon to Foxblade Media.
What? We changed it to what?
Foxblade. So patreon.com/Foxblade. 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 And we literally just changed that while sitting here getting ready for this show.
So about 10 minutes prior to this being filmed. So there you go. And if you have something you want us to sell for you, give us a shout at...
questions at RockyMountainGeekTank.com.
That's questions. Okay. All right. So we'll be back. Mariah will be back after this.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Mariah, and this is Book of the Geek. Today we're going to talk about Triskell Tales by Charles de Lint. Charles de Lint met his wife Marianne Harris in 1974, and starting that year, every year, he wrote her a story for Christmas. It wasn't a Christmas story. It was just a story that he wrote especially for her and gave to her as a Christmas present. As the years went on, he started distributing the stories to his family and friends, and eventually, 22 years later, she convinced him to collect the stories and bring them together in a volume he decided to call Triskell Tales. Charles de Lint wasn't terribly happy about the publication of this book to begin with, and I can see why. But it's one of the things that makes the book the most charming. In 1974, Charles de Lint wasn't a published author yet. Now he's published more than 70 books and he's considered a master of the field. So the first stories in the book are kind of terrible. They're pompous and overblown in that sort of high fantasy sense, with people whose names are like Songweaver and Windblower, and they have long flowing hair and old eyes. And it's really encouraging as an aspiring writer to see that a writer that I deeply admire started off writing things that were not that great. Many of the later stories have been published in other collections, so I was familiar with them. But most of the earlier stories I'd never read before, and that was fun too. The most interesting thing about Triskell Tales is seeing Charles de Lint evolve as an author over time, from high fantasy to more of a modern magical realism that's his trademark today. If you're interested in the writer's craft and how a writer develops over time, Triskell Tales is definitely worth a read. I give it 4 out of 5 quills. I have been and still am Mariah, and this was and still is Book of the Geek.
And we're back. Thanks, Mariah. Appreciate that. And some good book reviews. Sounds like an interesting book, too.
Has words.
It has words. That's what he does. But I like the idea of the writing the story thing. That was for someone every month. That was pretty cool.
So the next thing we're going to do here is we're cleverly calling conflicts. Conflicted with our conflict title. Because conventions like to be clever and put con in front of their word or behind their word, so you could have Genghis Khan for a convention. It's a gaming convention.
And the Wrath of Khan, which only happened once.
Khan.
Yeah, Nanda's Khan.
So we're doing conflict. There might even be a convention called Conflicted.
There probably is. It's about flicking like pogs or something. It's a pog.
Or it's people who are just having trouble picking what game to play.
That's true. So the question that we were coming up with here is, what do you do when you have 2 conventions in the same weekend, which is now actually, amazingly, starting to happen here in Colorado. We're getting enough conventions that just about every one of our weekends is filled.
Yeah, we can't do it. We don't have the manpower or the money to do it.
I mean, even we're trying to cover all the conventions for you, and we can't do it. I mean, we're noticing that we're going to have to make a choice for one or the other. I mean, last year we had Mile High Con and Rocky Mountain
Comic Con.
Yeah, Comic Book Con, Rocky Mountain Con.
Yep.
And they both were the same weekend. I didn't even know about the second one because there's just so much static now. It's so hard.
Right, and there's no clear website that we've been able to find that lists all of these together, that compiles them. You have the individual websites by the individual conventions promoting their own convention.
Right.
But of course they don't want to promote other people's conventions, so why should they anyway?
Right.
But so that seems to be a gap that's missing now. If anybody who's sitting around,
well, it might be us.
Might end up being us.
Might end up being us. Might check back to see if we've got a list, because it's going to help us. We're going to need it anyway.
Yep. And it's and conventions are pricey. You know, I think the cheapest one I went to within the past few years was maybe $25 for the weekend badge.
Yeah, and that's still pretty.
It's still
that's pretty cheap.
Yeah, usually you're looking at 40 to 50.
40 to $50.
Yeah.
Some of them are pretty steep. I think DCC is getting to like the 60, 70 range.
So it's you managed to pull off going to that convention early morning because you were already set to cover all of Mile High Con.
Right.
So
I just went ahead and went over to Rocky Mountain Con while I was at it. But I mean, you've got that same. We've got another one coming up here now with Conclave, because Conclave's moved, but it's moved right on top of Starfest.
Conclave decided, and they were probably moving to avoid conflicts in that month with other conventions because it was in August, and I believe it was like July or August. Which
it was July originally, yeah.
Which they decided to jump ahead, and now they're going to be falling opposite of
Starfest and Comic Fest,
yeah,
which is one of the old guard in this city. So it's going to be hard for them to pull people.
I can understand because they are different enough, but
that may have been their thought process.
Because Starfest isn't a gaming convention,
no,
although They might have some gaming there. I don't remember if they run any gaming. Most conventions have some.
They have a gaming room. They've got a gaming room, but they don't have the kind of gaming you're going to get from Conclave. So that's sort of the question: is you're dealing with what are you going to have with Conclave? I mean,
so when you have these conventions come up, then you got to decide, and then of course trying to find out when conventions are happening. Now you have conventions that are happening a week apart.
Yeah.
And now you have to budget double the amount for that.
Right, and that's something to think about. So what do you do whenever you come up with a choice like that? You're faced with, as a good example, let's say you're faced with Starfest versus Conclave.
It would have to be based off of what they're covering.
Right.
In this case, I'm way more into tabletop games than I am into just the general sci-fi world. So Starfest versus Conclave would win out if I had the full weekend to devote to it. It might not be worth going to Conclave if I can't get away for the whole weekend.
Right.
So if I can only do Saturday, then maybe Starfest would be better. Then to go hit their costume contest and watch that, because that's always fun to watch.
Okay, we'll have more after this.
Have fun conning.
Do you like comics and collectibles? Do you like shopping locally? Then you should come on down to Mile High Comics Littleton. They've got comics, posters, trades, statues, comics, trading cards, collectibles, comics, action figures, chess sets, and you guessed it, comics. That's Mile High Comics Littleton at 1360 West Littleton Boulevard.
And we're back.
Speaking of Conclave.
Of Conclave and conventions. Last year, our first time attending it, we went to Conclave of Gamers. It was their 3rd year in existence. And it's a convention all about gaming. And so they even had a video game set up there on top of it.
It was really interesting.
Yeah, it's a person doing a whole new game type thing. But it's we covered this last year to some degree, but we didn't get to cover. There's so much to it, we didn't get to cover it all. So we figured, why not? Since Conclave's coming up again in a couple of months, maybe a month by the time you see this, more than likely. Let's pick up some of the stuff that we missed last time.
Exactly. So there you go. So first, what are we doing first?
There was this guy selling a card game there, who you might remember.
I really liked the I Win game, and we've got a little bit of footage of us playing it and kind of getting into it, and let's show you that here.
Regular round. So if you want to start us off, go ahead and
Can I show everybody?
No, that becomes your hand, and it's your hand. If it's an arrow card, you may play it, but you do not have to play it.
Oh, okay.
And then you pass, and it becomes your turn. Okay? Card. It's an arrow card, you may play it.
So if I were
Text me what it is.
So suppose I were to play this now.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Now, I get a chance to react. I don't have any cards yet. I can't do much.
Oh, you don't even get to draw then, do you?
No. Do you have a lightning bolt?
Oh.
So that's a good try. Hi, I'm Eric Isaac, and my game company is Clever Quick Games. You can find it at cleverquickgames.com. I do I Win, and I also have a second game, Alien Abduction, for fun and profit. And of course, you can find that, like I was saying, at cleverquickgames.com.
I really like that game. What's more entertaining is that my son just loves that game. So one of the things that, especially whenever I'm dealing with all of my tactical tabletop games, that I really like is terrain. I like to put the terrain in. The Robotech game that I just got now, it actually has line of sight rules, and I'm sure that Warhammer 40K had something similar.
Yes. And in fact, you can check out Guy's unboxing of Robotech.
Yeah. Which I'm still working on the minis of. But yeah, one of the things is terrain. And one of the guys at the Conclave just had this amazing way of doing terrain. And we've got an interview with him.
Tabletop Props is a company, basically a toy company. I want to create an entire line of miniatures based only around props and terrain, with the main emphasis being on props. Not just to the war gamers and the Dungeons and Dragons people, but create stuff that's detailed enough to where toy train enthusiasts would feel proud to put it on their $30,000 set, but affordable enough to where kids could actually get their parents to pay for it so that they can use it in a school diorama.
Nice, so high quality work for low price.
Exactly, exactly.
Great. So yeah, as I remember, you are working on 2 different projects. One, you have this water type terrain.
Yeah. So I tried to launch the Kickstarter for the covered wagon all on its own, and the problem is I'm doing it in a very affordable piece. So you do a $15 very affordable piece, you add an $8 shipping charge, you add a 10% Kickstarter fee, you add an $11,000 molding cost, and all of a sudden it's a $25 piece that I have to sell 1,200 of them. It gets really difficult, and it didn't pan out. So I've reassessed the formula, and I'm trying to get that molding cost down as much as possible. So I'm launching this silly little campaign for these water tiles. And my entire Kickstarter video I call the counterintuitive Kickstarter video because it's actually a 4-minute segment on how to make the tiles. But it's gotten a lot of good feedback. I blew out my goal in about 15 minutes, and I'm a little over $3,000 in about 2 days. So that's pretty cool. In brief, these are styrene lighting panels that cover up the fluorescent light fixtures. You Dremel it out, you sand down the edges, you paint the back of it, and it makes instant water.
I think it's a brilliant idea because even though you're telling people how to make it, they can factor in the fact the time and the effort of making it, and they go, that's actually a really reasonable cost. I'd rather pay this guy to send me some of them.
That was interesting. Do you like Dungeons and Dragons sort of?
I like more dragons than the dungeons.
Really?
So I don't like to mix the two.
I like the dungeons. They taste better.
Well, it's like Oreos. You got to separate the two.
And then you just get the
dragon in the center.
In the center.
So there's tons of games you can play at Conclave, which is one of the things I loved about it. If you didn't like this type of game, keep looking. You'll find something you like. And there was this one woman there who ran this combat game, and it was a one-off, so you just showed up. The rules are really simple, fast to learn. You just play. And it's a dungeon crawl. Removes all the role-playing out of the game because some people like dungeon crawls but don't like the role-playing. And this was very similar to that, and she brought this impressive dungeon, 3D dungeon layout where you could run your
menus. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
It really was pretty.
There's a quick little bit of that.
Troy Fleur with Rocky Mountain Geek Tank. I'm standing here with Marie. She runs the Dungeon Crawl. What's the actual full word?
It started as Dungeon Bash, and I've changed it and modified it and ripped it apart and thrown it back together to be a basic D20 dungeon crawl. It's a good introduction to Dungeons and Dragons because it takes a lot of the math out.
And it keeps enough in that it has the same flavor, so people familiar with it can easily adapt to it, and people looking to get into it have a good starter. Tell me about the process of what got you interested into making the dungeon and then how you did it.
Well, I've always liked the terrain aspect because it adds something to the game when you have a good piece of terrain out there. And dungeons are fun, let's face it. This is a company called Hearst Arts, makes the molds. So got the cement, cast all the bricks, built it, painted it, the whole deal. It's a project.
It sounds like a lot of work. And then not only the dungeon, and then you had to collect all the figures you wanted to have for it.
Correct. I went through and everything is chart-based, so I had to have enough for 40 different encounters. And then they're all Reaper miniatures. I'm fond of Reaper. And once my friends found out what was going on, they asked to paint the miniatures as well. So the miniatures are painted by several different people, and some award-winning painters wanted in on it. So people can get killed, or try to kill, I should say, monsters that are really well painted.
Nice.
But what I did is I took out the bits that are great for roleplay and regular gaming, but what they are is they slow down gameplay when you're doing something like this. So people can move around a lot faster. They roll a d20 and add the red number.
That's all we've got for today.
Join us next time, in a month from now, when I will cover the third installment of my How to Paint Miniatures aspect. You'll get to see how to paint in mass lots of figures. I'm painting the zombies for Zombicide.
And we'll cover NDK 2014.
Nandasukan.
Yeah, Nandaskan.
Nandas.
Which is a very near and dear convention to my heart. And that'll be really cool.
You know, with all these conventions, you have to have a really high constitution to make it through all of them.
Enjoy what you just saw?
If you did, you can help support the show by going to
patreon.com/GeekTake.